Welcome back. This is Green Mountain Mornings on KVT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. I'm your host, Olga Peters. 21 minutes past the top of the hour. And welcome back to my guest, Chris Mays from The Reformer. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well.
And I also have to welcome to the studio BCTV. They are filming this segment of Green Mountain Mornings. It will be rebroadcast later today on their all their stations because they're awesome. And rebroadcast of Green Mountain Mornings tonight is sponsored by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. Chris, tell us about the Brattleboro Select Board meeting that happened last week.
Yeah, we got an exciting development from Youth Services about a jobs program that their the Workforce Development Director is working on, and that's Emily Kornheiser. Mm-hmm. She's been involved in many community projects, and she said that the program is very doable.
Huh. Okay.
And it's starting to take shape. She said she's going to talk with small business owners and try to work out an affordable program, so that people in vulnerable populations that her group serves can find work. It might be temporary, and she said it might be a gateway to something else, but it might not be. So
right.
That's almost an exact quote from her during the meeting.
But it's exciting, and I'm glad you bring up the Youth Services Jobs Program, because I had Josh Davis from Groundworks in the studio last week on Wednesday, and he was saying how happy he was that jobs program was there, because he and the town, or Groundworks in the town, have been trying to create that day program for folks who don't have work but need work for a day and all those things. And the red tape they've run into, it's been really hard for them to move that program forward. But he was saying that this youth services program may be the first step towards a bigger picture of a day program.
Yeah. And I think youth services is up against the same thing. Mm-hmm. They have to look at insurance issues and liability, all that kind of stuff, and as well as wages. Is it an internship or is it a job? And one of the main goals is to make it as least burdensome to the employer and the employee.
Right. Well, I can imagine in both cases, one of the things they're up against is you have people who are somewhat outside the quote unquote system. And then you've got the system, which has, strengths and weaknesses to it. But how do you make the two work together?
Yeah.
What else happened at the meeting that you think is worth noting?
Well, the parking and solid waste budgets were approved.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, there was no surprise there. In the parking budget discussion, they talked about changing the parking meters. Mm-hmm. One idea has been to implement a system where you can use credit cards and debit cards instead of the coins, which are now required. Mm-hmm. And at a previous meeting, the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance Executive Director, Stephanie Bonin, mentioned this program where you can get apps on your phone and you don't have to change the infrastructure. And that wouldn't come at an upfront cost to the town. Town staff had looked at it, and they said this might be a good idea. There was still some concern from some of the board members about whether people would have service downtown to use the app. Mm-hmm. And so they didn't make any decisions. Some of the board members were supportive of switching out the meters and doing the app.
Okay.
But I think they want to get a little more information. I think particularly around whether people have service would be able to use the app downtown.
Mm-hmm. One of my questions from that whole discussion is, why do we need it? Is the infrastructure we have now getting old and just needs to be replaced? Are they getting feedback from people saying we want something different? I mean, what?
Yeah, I think people want the card reader. I think they're tired of trying to find the change in their car.
Okay.
And other towns have seen success with moving to that program. And Assistant Town Manager Patrick Moreland says other towns see a 10 to 15% increase in parking revenue because by changing it. He says there's this strange human psychology where people are apt to put a little bit more money into the meter if it's on their card because they'd rather be safe than sorry, and they're not, searching their pockets, their cars for the coins.
Right.
And I have to say that's probably true because I parked in Manchester, New Hampshire a few weeks ago, and I just put it on as long as I possibly could, and I paid for something I didn't really need because they didn't enforce parking after a certain time in the lot I was in. So I ended up paying, more than I needed to.
Mm-hmm. Good for the town, maybe not so good for your budget.
Right.
But Patrick's right. I mean, if I go, it is that thing when it's on the card, it's so much easier to overspend because it's not that physical, tangible thing.
Yeah, and I know when I go on interviews downtown, I'm always stressing at the end because I'm going to be 10 minutes late back to the car. Am I going to get a ticket?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had that stress too. For the meeting, there was also a number of grants that were handed out and accepted, and I think one of them was for the skateboard park.
Yeah,
Thompson Trust?
Yeah. That was that an application? I think it was an application for the Thompson Trust.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because they were all I'm pretty sure they were all applications, yeah.
Any projects that stood out besides the skateboard park, or were they pretty perfunctory?
Yeah, I think they were kind of business as usual. One was to pay for an investigator at the Brattleboro Police Department who would cover, I think it was child sex crimes for the whole county. And yeah, so that was one of the bigger ones.
And I think I saw that Bradley House's
right
CBDG grant got extended.
Yeah, they wanted to get $50,000 more. Because there have been some construction delays and they've run into some financial shortages.
Well, it's a big project.
Yeah.
So, wow. I always find the grant part of the meeting interesting because that's where you get to see where all the projects are moving forward or they're new or that kind of thing. It's a great way to keep a pulse on what's happening in town.
Yeah, it is.
We are going to hand you on over to Natalie Knowles and her local news, but Chris and I will return after the break. Okay, we are back. This is Green Mountain Mornings on KVT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. I'm your host, Olga Peters. 38 minutes past the top of the hour, and Chris Mays from The Reformer. Hey there.
Hello.
Tell us, what is the next evolution in the Hermitage?
Well, right now they're Berkshire Bank, the bank that foreclosed on the properties. The Hermitage Club didn't pay their mortgage payments. Right.
Which is why you've been in the Newfane courthouse for many a day.
Yeah, they're getting ready to have. Well, it's a court-appointed receiver who's going to protect and preserve the properties.
Okay.
So they've been going back and forth, and the judge issued an opinion and an order last week, and it was kind of a small victory for the Hermitage Club because they opposed having the receiver have access to their business records, bank accounts, and emails. And the judge sided with them on that issue.
Okay.
And it was interesting because he also said that the receiver shouldn't be interfering in any way with their restructuring. And the bank before that had said the Hermitage Club has no right to restructure as we go through these proceedings. So I think there is still some hope with the Hermitage Club that they find somebody to pay the bank, get these properties running under the Hermitage Club with some new owners, new financial backing. But the court is also ready to see, if necessary, the properties go to public auction.
Oh, okay.
So right now the Hermitage Club filed something on Friday, and they basically want to know more exactly what the price of the receiver is going to be, because they know the rates, but they want to really pinpoint what it's going to cost, because all those costs are going to be lumped into whatever fees are associated with the auction.
Okay.
So whatever the buyer puts up or offers is going to have to be more than X, and that X is going to contain the receiver fees too.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, with the restructuring that you mentioned, is that I remember you talking a while ago, and I'm wondering if my information's still up to date, that they were kind of looking at maybe buying out Jim Barnes, putting a new person in charge. I'm a little foggy on that.
During the winter, there was a meeting at the Hermitage Club, and I think some of the club members of the exclusive ski club, they wanted to band together and buy out the club.
Okay.
But now it seems like there might be a different financial group, and they're working with Jim.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so this is more, appropriately called restructuring, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that for me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. There's been a lot of developments with this story, and another one was the inn at Sawmill Farm in Dover. Right. It's a historic property. It's got a lot of history, and it was there before the village of West Dover was created.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that old. Wow.
The property, it became an inn later on. But it's going to be going to public auction. The Hermitage Club bought it, I think, about 3 or 4 years ago, and they didn't pay the mortgage. And so this company that sold it to them, sold them the mortgage, is out of Wildwood Crest, New Jersey. And so the foreclosure has led to a public auction, and it's going to be run by Sheriff Keith Clark.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone wants a really beautiful historic inn, you want to head on over to Westover.
Yeah. It's June 25th.
Okay, June 25th.
Yeah, I think I will be there. It's actually right next to where I live, so.
Oh, good. So you can kind of stroll over in your PJs?
Yeah. I usually reserve Saturdays for mountain biking, but I'll probably go there first.
Well, you could bike over.
Yeah. Not with my bike. It's too heavy for pedaling.
Okay. Oh, shucks. You like just going down the hills.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we had a development in the issue around Act 46.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yes.
I think there were a lot of unhappy communities around the state because, we've been waiting for the Secretary of Education to say what the unmerged school districts are going to do. And in Brattleboro and the Brattleboro area, the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union, the opinion is basically that the merger that had been defeated by voters in November happened, and so there were some unhappy people.
I can't speak for you, but I, to be honest, wasn't really surprised that the AOE came down on that side. In part because it seemed to me, and for a lot of people, this was a criticism of the let's just call it the merger document instead of the alternative document, for lack of a better term. It seemed a little bit more in line with the way the state was leaning overall. So personally, I wasn't super surprised.
I think the surprise was in how voters rejected it, and then it was still suggested. But like you said, the law basically, that was the recommendation.
Yeah.
that mergers like the one proposed here happen. In Wyndham, the Wyndham School Board and the principal of the elementary school, they were unhappy too.
Yeah.
Because they're in such a rural, hilly spot. They don't feel like they would be able to really work with their neighboring districts. And the state's suggesting they merge with Jamaica, Newbrook rather,
Right.
and Townsend, and they don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, we still have time for public comment
Right.
coming up, especially at that meeting in September that will be in the local area. And I don't know, do we dare guess that there may be some strong public comment at these meetings?
I've been told there will be, and I think there's a meeting in Dummerston this week or last week where I think some of the opponents of the merger are gonna meet up and come up with a game plan. And in Wyndham, they actually invited the State Board of Education up to host a meeting in Wyndham so everyone could see their geographical.
Yeah, because it really is up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Southern Vermont one is going to be at the Green Mountain High School in Chester.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't remember the date at this point. There were parts of the alternative proposal, though, that, I was, Lyle Holiday mentioned, I had her on the show, that she was surprised the state hadn't considered some portions of the alternative structure. And I was reviewing the alternative proposal the other day and thinking, yeah, I was kind of surprised that the state didn't consider some of the leadership. Remember, there was that leadership board and also the allowing students to move from school to school on a limited basis. I was kind of surprised some of those things weren't considered.
Yeah, I think the state might be expecting the communities to work out some of those details.
Okay.
That's just my take on it. I could be wrong there, and I think if looking at the proposed plan, they want the people to work together, the people for and against the merger. So
actually, I have no doubt that will eventually happen.
Yeah, I mean, the people who are involved all have a passion for the children and the education of so.
Yeah, I kind of have no doubt that eventually that will happen. I hope it's not too bumpy a road getting there.
Yeah.
Anything else in the world of education?
Well, yeah, actually, I'm glad you asked. Yesterday, I went up to Brattleboro Union High School and spoke with a few of the exchange students.
Great.
Who were about to leave. So I talked with them about their experience, and they were all sad to go.
Aww.
I mean, one kid is planning to return and go to college in New York City.
Uh-huh.
And he plans to also visit Brattleboro from time to time. And some of the other kids were a little sadder. One girl in particular said she was really sad because she didn't think she would really ever come back here because she wants to travel all around the world in the U.S. So she didn't feel like she would necessarily have time to come back here.
Okay.
Some of the it was interesting to hear some of the differences between their schools and schools here. One kid said he felt like Vermont hated President Trump more than other places in the United States or around the world.
Yeah, he could possibly be correct on that. I'm not sure, but
yeah,
we're at least more vocal about some of our feelings.
And they all seemed very, I don't know if you would say impressed or just, excited to have been involved in the student protests, or to watch them at least, with the over the gun debate due to school shootings around the country. So it was interesting to hear all their takes on our local community's school and the education system.
Anything that surprised you?
It was funny. One of the students said, "Yeah, back at our school, we're not allowed to just sell snacks and food in the hallways to raise money for clubs. And here it's just if you want to raise money, you just stand there and sell treats." Mm-hmm. And then it was funny because Jill Stahl-Tyler, the school board chair woman in the Brattleboro Town School District, she said, "Well, actually, the supervisory union board just passed this new policy where we're not going to let as many bake sales happen in the schools out of concern for nutrition and all." So it was funny. But that was something that the exchange student said other exchange students from her country had mentioned, and that was something that they brought back to their schools and said, "Hey, why can't we do this? Why, this is a good way to raise money."
Oh, interesting. Huh. We take them for granted, bake sales.
Right.
We totally take them for granted. I never realized they could be unique.
Yeah, me neither.
Huh. That's one of the things I love about cultural exchange is so often we focus on the big differences like language difference or whatever, but quite often it's the little details that, like a bake sale, that are really the most interesting.
Yeah, and that's why I was happy to have Jill there, because she kind of parsed some of this out, after 30, 40 minutes. We talked about the normal stuff, the language barrier and getting used to the different location, whether it was different than the hometown. But then later on came the stories and all the little things that I wouldn't necessarily have asked about. But Jill had a background with these kids, and I think she coordinates the program. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She runs an organization called Global Cow, and it also, she works with, I think, an organization called PAX. Mm-hmm. And they do the cultural exchange year-long homestays. Yeah.
But all these kids loved it. They loved the school and they loved the community. A lot of them learned how to ski or cross-country ski or snowboard and got used to the cold temperatures in the winter.
Yeah, that would be hard if you're coming from a warmer climate.
Yeah.
Yeah, your blood just hasn't thickened up yet.
A couple of the kids kept complaining and said, "I don't know if I can do it anymore. Not one more day of snow." At first they thought it was cool playing in the snow. And I said, "Well, there's people in this community who totally agree with you."
Yeah. Yeah. I think about when I was a kid, snow was so much fun. And now that I'm adult and I have to shovel or drive in it or something, it's not so much fun.
Yeah, one kid said, "Yeah, it would be nice if it just stayed in the grass and it wasn't on the road and we didn't have to pick it up."
Yeah, if we didn't have to slog through it. Oh, well, That's fun, Chris. Thank you so much for sharing those stories with us.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. I'm always sad to say goodbye to my guests, but hey, Chris, thanks for coming by today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.